Have you ever stared at your phone for hours, rereading one message, wondering if you said too much or not enough? Do you replay conversations in your head at 2 a.m., analyzing every word, every pause, every emoji, asking yourself, did I ruin it? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Being between 18 and 30 can feel like living inside your own mind. You're figuring out who you are, what you want, and where you belong. And when it comes to relationships, romantic ones especially, those questions get louder. Suddenly, every text feels loaded. Every delay feels personal. Every small shift in tone feels like a warning sign. You might not realize this, but overthinking in relationships isn't just about the relationship. It's often about uncertainty. And this stage of life is full of uncertainty. Careers are unstable. Friend groups change. Identities evolve. You're building a future while still trying to understand your present. Of course your mind is scanning for threats. Of course it's trying to predict what could go wrong. Here's what psychology says. Our brains are wired to look for danger. Thousands of years ago, that kept us alive. Today the danger isn't a wild animal, it's rejection. It's being left on read, it's the fear of not being chosen, and your brain treats that fear like it's life-threatening. So when someone takes longer than usual to reply, your thoughts don't just stop at they're probably busy. They spiral into, they're losing interest. Then, I knew it. I'm too much. Then, I always ruin things. And before you know it, you're not just analyzing a message, you're questioning your worth. If you're in this age range, relationships often feel intense. First loves, serious commitments, situationships that blur the lines, dating apps that make everything feel replaceable. You're constantly comparing yourself. Who are they following? Why did they like that photo? Am I enough? Studies suggest that young adults today experience higher levels of anxiety around relationships compared to previous generations. Social media plays a big role. You don't just experience your relationship, you observe it from the outside. You analyze it like a third party. You measure it against curated highlight reels. You might not realize this, but overthinking often begins with a simple desire, to feel safe. Maybe you grew up in an environment where love felt unpredictable. Maybe affection came and went. Maybe you had to guess how someone was feeling because they didn't say it. If that was your experience, your brain learned that closeness can be unstable. So now it scans constantly for signs that something is shifting. This is sometimes connected to attachment styles. If you tend to worry about being abandoned or not being enough, you might lean toward an anxious attachment pattern. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means your nervous system learned to stay alert. When someone you care about pulls away, even slightly, your body reacts. Your heart beats faster, your stomach tightens, you feel restless. That's not drama. That's your nervous system trying to protect you. But here's the difficult part. The more you try to control the outcome through overthinking, the more anxious you feel. You replay conversations to find reassurance. You analyze their tone to find certainty. You imagine worst-case scenarios to prepare yourself. But instead of feeling safer, you feel more exhausted. Maybe you've done this, typing a long message, deleting it, rewriting it softer, then worrying it sounds too distant. Or checking their last scene and trying to calculate what it means. Or asking friends, do you think they're mad at me? Even though nothing actually happened. Overthinking convinces you that if you just think hard enough, you'll prevent heartbreak. But love doesn't work like a math problem. Here's what psychology says about rumination, the habit of replaying negative thoughts. The more you repeat a thought, the more real and urgent it feels. Even if it started as a small doubt, repetition strengthens it. Your brain doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality very well. If you vividly imagine them leaving you, your body reacts as if it's happening. That's why overthinking feels so heavy. You're emotionally living through scenarios that haven't happened. And between 18 and 30, identity is still forming. You're asking yourself, who am I in relationships? What do I deserve? Am I lovable as I am? If you don't have clear answers yet, every relationship can feel like a test. You might not realize this, but sometimes overthinking is actually self-doubt in disguise. If deep down you're unsure of your value, you'll look for proof that confirms your fear. A short reply becomes evidence. A canceled plan becomes rejection. Silence becomes disinterest. But here's the truth. Not every change means something is wrong. Sometimes people are tired, sometimes they're stressed, sometimes they're just not glued to their phones. The challenge is that your brain prefers certainty, and when certainty isn't available, it creates stories. Let's imagine this scenario. You send a message, "Hey, I had a great time today." They don't reply for 3 hours. In that gap, your mind writes a novel. They didn't enjoy it. I talked too much. They're comparing me to someone else. By the time they finally respond with, "Me too. Sorry, I was in a meeting," you've already gone through waves of anxiety. The gap between action and response is where overthinking lives. And in modern dating culture, there are many gaps. Ghosting, mixed signals, casual labels. It's hard to know where you stand. When expectations aren't clear, your brain fills in the blanks, often with worst-case assumptions. But around the middle of this journey, something important happens. Many people in their 20s start realizing that overthinking isn't just about the other person. It's about control. You can't control how someone feels. You can't control whether they stay. And that lack of control is terrifying. So your mind tries to regain power through analysis. If I decode every sign, I won't be blindsided. If I prepare for rejection, it won't hurt as much. But here's the deeper insight. Constantly preparing for loss prevents you from fully experiencing connection. When you're always bracing for impact, you can't relax into joy. You might not realize this, but sometimes overthinking creates the very distance you fear. When you constantly seek reassurance, your partner may feel pressure. When you assume negative intentions, you may react defensively. The relationship begins responding not to reality but to your fears. That doesn't mean you're to blame. It means fear can shape behavior. Here's what psychology says about cognitive distortions, those thinking patterns that twist reality. Mind reading, catastrophizing, personalization. These are common in anxious overthinking. Mind reading is assuming you know what they're thinking. Catastrophizing is jumping to the worst outcome. Personalization is believing everything is about you. Between 18 and 30, when emotional regulation skills are still developing, these patterns can feel overwhelming. But there is hope. The first step isn't to stop thinking. That rarely works. The mind doesn't respond well to force. Instead, it responds to awareness. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, gently ask, "What am I actually afraid of right now?" Not the surface fear, the deeper one. Are you afraid of being abandoned? Of not being chosen? Of wasting time? Of being unworthy? When you name the real fear, it loses some of its power. You might not realize this, but your thoughts are not commands. They are mental events. They come and go. One helpful shift is learning to separate facts from stories. The fact, they haven't replied yet. The story, they don't care about me anymore. That small distinction can calm your nervous system. It can also help to build a life that doesn't revolve entirely around the relationship. When your sense of identity includes hobbies, friendships, goals, and self-growth, a delayed reply doesn't feel like your whole world collapsing. Studies suggest that people with stronger self-concepts, meaning they know who they are outside of relationships, experience less anxiety and romantic uncertainty. And that makes sense. If your whole sense of worth is tied to one person's attention, any shift feels catastrophic. Another gentle practice is communication. Instead of overanalyzing silently, consider expressing your feelings calmly, not accusingly, not dramatically, just honestly. Sometimes I overthink when I don't hear back. I'm working on it, but I just wanted to share. Healthy partners respond to vulnerability with care. Of course, not every relationship is healthy. If someone consistently dismisses your feelings, gives mixed signals, or uses silence as manipulation, your anxiety might not be irrational. Sometimes overthinking is your intuition picking up on inconsistency. That's why it's important to reflect, is your anxiety coming from past wounds or from present red flags? Sometimes it's both. And if you ever feel that anxiety is taking over your daily life, affecting sleep, appetite, concentration, it may be helpful to talk to a therapist or counselor. This video can't replace professional support, but reaching out for help can be a powerful step. Now let's talk about something gentle but important, self-compassion. Imagine your closest friend telling you they're overthinking a relationship. Would you call them dramatic? Or would you say, It makes sense you're scared. You really care. Try offering that same kindness to yourself. You are not weak for wanting reassurance. You are not needy for wanting clarity. You are human. As you move through your 20s, relationships will teach you about yourself. Some will stay, some will end. And yes, heartbreak might happen. But overthinking won't prevent pain. It only makes you experience it early and repeatedly. Real growth comes from learning that you can survive uncertainty. You can sit with not knowing. You can feel anxious and still choose calm actions. And slowly, your nervous system learns that connection doesn't always equal danger. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes moments where you choose not to send that extra text, where you put the phone down and breathe, where you remind yourself, I am okay right now. Because in this exact moment, you probably are. Between 18 and 30, everything feels urgent. Love feels urgent. Decisions feel urgent. Timelines feel urgent. But relationships are not races. They are experiences. You don't have to solve them in your head. You are allowed to enjoy someone without predicting the ending. You are allowed to trust slowly. You are allowed to let things unfold. And if someone leaves, it will hurt, but it will not erase your worth. You might not realize this, but the goal isn't to eliminate overthinking completely. The goal is to reduce its control over you. Each time you notice it and choose a softer response, you're rewiring your brain. Each time you challenge a catastrophic thought, you're building resilience. Each time you communicate openly. Instead of assuming, you're creating healthier patterns. Growth in your 20s isn't about having perfect relationships. It's about learning emotional awareness. And you're already doing that by reflecting on this. So tonight, if you find yourself staring at your phone, feeling that familiar wave of doubt, try placing your hand over your chest, take a slow breath, and remind yourself, my fear is valid, but it's not the whole story. Love doesn't require constant analysis. It requires presence. It requires courage. And sometimes, it requires letting go of the need to control what hasn't happened yet. If this resonated with you, you're not alone.